Hey there, you fabulous folks. I hope your day has been absolutely awesome. We're back for another exciting episode of What If Naruto Was the Golden Devil. A big shout out to the amazing author behind this fanfiction and show them some love. You'll find their details in the description box below. If this what if scenario is getting your imagination going, drop a comment down below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to explore more mind-blowing what ifs on the channel. Alright, without further ado, let's jump right into this video. So the final battle begins. I wonder who will come out on top. Volley said to himself as he crossed his arms with a smirk. The silver-haired young man had moved closer to the barrier covering Kuoh Academy, and was standing on top of a water tower near the school. Either way, I get to see a good battle before I have to go inside. It will depend on how strong Naruto Lucifer truly is. A female voice spoke up next to him, making him shift his gaze to the side to see Yumi was floating next to him. Azazel was pretty clear on his orders. Ollie nodded his head before uncrossing his arms. I know that, Yumi. We are not to harm him or anyone else in his group, and only focus on retrieving Kakabiel. You don't need to remind me. Wouldn't have to, if you weren't so stubborn on proving your strength. Whatever. I'm going to call Azazel to give him a status update. It won't take long, so I'll be back. Yumi replied before she started to turn her body around. I did what I came here to do anyway, so I'll leave the rest of the mission to you. Are you talking about getting your revenge on Valper for what he did to you and those children? Or do you mean seeing your brother alive and well after so many years? Volley called out, causing Yumi come to a stop. It's too bad he's a devil now. Shut up, Volley. Yumi snapped without turning her head back to look at him. Keep your eyes on the battle, and let me know if anything happens. Yeah. Volley waved his hand in a dismissive wave. Humph. And don't do any reckless. I don't want to clean up after you. An amused smirk appeared on Volley's face as he watched Yumi fly away from him towards the nearest rooftop, letting out a chuckle before rotating himself back to the battle. You haven't changed at all. Hard to believe you're one of the few people I trust. But at least you and your brother finally got some closure. Landing on the rooftop, Yumi couldn't help but smile brightly as she rested a hand on her large chest. You have no idea how happy I am to see you again. You've really grown up to be a fine man. Isaiah. Kuoh Academy. Ha! Naruto shouted as he soared a Kakabiel with Excalibur held high above his head, swinging it down to meet the fallen angel's weapon. Kakabiel only smirked as he raised his blade to block Naruto's strike. The collision of their weapons created a shockwave that caused the clouds surrounding them to vanish, and the wind to pick up. Even down below, a few brought a hand up to block the gusts from affecting their sights. Interesting, you certainly have more power than the rest of them. But will it be enough? Kakabiel taunted as he put more force in his weapons and started to push Naruto back, but it was quickly put to a halt, as Naruto mirrored his actions with equal force. Naruto gritted his teeth as he glared at Kakabiel. Whether it is or isn't doesn't matter. I will defeat you. The two stared at each other for several seconds before pulling away from each other, and traded several blows. Spinning his spear, Kakabiel positioned it with the blade pointing at Naruto's head, and jabbed forward. Bringing his sword up as quickly as he could, Naruto deflected the spear from piercing his face, and spun over Kakabiel's extended arm, and raising Excalibur above his head, and brought it down. But Kakabiel did a spin himself to dodge the attack before using the momentum of his rotation to increase the power behind his swing. Naruto raised up an arm while summoning a barrier over his arm. The energy shield managed to defend against the attack, but it still sent Naruto flying back a few feet. Such incredible strength. Don't let your guard down, Naruto-sama. Wasn't the plan, Saber? Naruto communicated back as he quickly recovered and came to a stop several yards away from Kakabiel. I'm impressed, Lucifer. Kakabiel raised a hand and created hundreds of light-based weapons around him before firing them at Naruto. The devil's eyes narrowed as he extended his wings as far as they could go before flying away from the projectiles. This is on a whole different level than what a Bazith could do. Naruto muttered to himself as he noticed that the weapons were actually following him, before they divided themselves in several directions, and were coming at Naruto from all sides. Damn it. Don't act so surprised. This battle is on a completely differently level than anything you had to deal with before. Kakabiel let out a bellowing laugh as he watched Naruto duck, and dodged his weapons of light, before using Excalibur to destroy the ones that missed him. You're good at handling a bunch at a time, but what about the entire arsenal? With that said, the long-haired man raised his hand and pointed it at Naruto, directing all of his weapons to attack Naruto at once. Naruto! Ryu shouted out in worry as Naruto was trapped in the center of all the weapons. Akeno and the others had worried looks as well as they watched the weapons come at Naruto from every single direction. Naruto-senpai. Damn, my boosted gear isn't ready yet. Issei gritted his teeth as he placed his normal hand on the red gauntlet. But what happened next surprised everyone as the yellow light magic from Kakabiel's weapons were ripped apart by multiple golden light and purple-red darkness spears, followed by Naruto hovering in the center of it all while swinging his blade around at untraceable speed, destroying all of the remaining weapons, until Naruto was surrounded by their remaining particles. Kakabiel's eyes widened in shock at the spectacle before darting his gaze to the side in time to block Naruto's quick attack. This increase in speed. Kakabiel thought to himself as he regained his composure. Impressive. I didn't think you could have managed to tap into your sword's true abilities so quickly. You haven't seen anything yet. Tightening his grip on the handle, Excalibur's blade once again started to glow as Naruto spun his sword and Kakabiel's weapon in a different direction, before Naruto swung his weapon as Kakabiel again. This time the fallen angel summoned another light spear to block the attack, but this time once Naruto's blade in contact with Kakabiel's, the weapon exploded into fragments. Taking advantage of the opening, Naruto removed one of his hands off the handle to create an orb of light and darkness in the middle of his palm. Kakabiel raised his free hand up quickly, as Naruto fired the orb at him, in order to catch it like he had done with Ryu's earlier attack, but to his shock the attack went straight through his hand and phased away. An Elusiard. The fallen angel was cut off as he was cut across the chest, and Naruto seemed to disappear, only to reappear behind Kakabiel with blood on his sword. The 7 fragments of Excalibur had unique abilities of their own, but they all originated from this blade. Naruto explained as he swung his sword outward to shake the blood off the blade. And now that it has become a single sword again, those abilities have increased to levels that no one has seen before. With that said, Naruto charged forward and started circling around Kakabiel, using both the illusionary powers and enhanced speed of his sword to create afterimages of himself at various points around his opponent. Kakabiel was silent, and had his head down as he raised a hand up to his wound. It wasn't a deep wound, but the fact that Naruto had dealt damage so bad that he was actually bleeding this bad. That brought a large face-splitting grin to his face. Down below everyone was looking up at the battle with various emotions, most of it being awe at the fact that Naruto was going toe-to-toe with Kakabiel when they were having such trouble. Incredible, he might actually stand a chance. Zenobia commented as she leaned on her sword, marveled at the true capabilities of Excalibur. Yes, but we can't afford for Naruto to prolong in this battle. Aracide said as she crossed her arms with a serious expression. Kakabiel's spell is still active, and if he takes too long, then it will go off and destroy the area. And the worst part is that I don't think Kakabiel is at full strength yet. Wow, seriously? Issei exclaimed in shock as he spun to face the White Queen. Gawain was the one to answer as he stood up from checking on Ashia, a tired look on his face as he walked towards the group. Kakabiel is one of the strongest members of the Fallen Angel faction. If he wanted to, he could have created a single light spear, and that would have been more than enough to destroy this town and the surrounding area. Naruto-kun certainly has his hands full, right Bucho? Unfortunately, there is nothing we can do at the moment. Many of us took a lot of damage before Naruto showed up. Ryu said to Akeno as the two continued to stare up at the battle, not looking away at all, as Naruto continued to fly around the unmoving Kakabiel. One of the radiated beauty's hands clenched tightly at her side as she could feel worry building up inside of her. Kibble looked away from the battle with a low chuckle, a grim smile on his face as he spoke. I don't know what to think about Excalibur actually helping us win this battle. Then think about Naruto-senpai. The blonde knight turned his head to see that Kaneko was looking up at him with her usual facial expression, though he could see the comforting gaze flashing in her eyes. He is fighting as well, so believe in him. Yeah. Just a little bit more, Issei thought as he looked down at his boosted gear. Only a few more boosts to go, and I can help Naruto-senpai. In the skies. Hahaha. Gahahaha. Naruto was surprised when Kakabiel began to let out laugh, coming to a stop as he studied the fallen angel. Now this is exactly what I wanted. The perfect beginning to my war. You truly deserve the title as that devil's heir, Naruto Lucifer. All that power at your disposal. I wager that all that power flowing through your body right now, that wonderful sensation of superiority is like nothing you've ever felt before. Closing his eyes briefly, Naruto took in a deep breath before he answered Kakabiel. You're right about the power flowing through me, it's incredible. But, so what? I figured as much. That is the best part for warriors like you and I. We feel more alive when we are in battle than we do anywhere else. Kakabiel said with a smirk as he pointed a finger at Naruto. You can deny it all you want by saying you desire peace, but in the end you can't deny what's in your blood. My blood? Yes, during the war the four great Satans were some of the most destructive forces that the devil faction possessed. And your ancestor, even I will admit that he was someone that I was unsure of who was stronger if we went all out. Kakabiel explained before lowering his hand and summoned a new spear. The original Lucifer and his clan were devils that took pleasure in destroying their enemies in battle, and anyone who stood in their way. You have his blood flowing through your veins as we speak, so tell me why you are so against my war. Sorry to disappoint you, but I could care less about what kind of person my great-grandfather was before his death. Or even the previous Lucifer clan's reputation for that matter. I swore that I would bring the Lucifer clan back from the ashes, and regain their former glory. The blood in my veins and my ancestors have nothing to do with my actions. I will carve a new future with my own hands. Naruto shifted his stance so that his sword was positioned in front of him. You are just a relic of the past, Kakabiel, staying in one place, not moving forward with the rest of the world. TCH. All that power in your hands, and it's all wasted. Kakabiel shouted as his power skyrocketed and a column of light magic surrounded him, the torn shirt flying off before vaporizing due to Kakabiel's power. You say that I'm not moving forward, but you're wrong. Once I have annihilated you and your little group, my second great war will begin, and I will finally have everything I need. But even if you do manage to kill us, charging forward, Naruto swung his sword at Kakabiel, that will only paint you as the target, since all of the factions will be after you. All the better. Kakabiel replied as he easily blocked Excalibur just before it hit him. Anything that happens as a result from today's battle would be paradise, compared to this fucking pseudo-piece that has everyone twirling their thumbs. Even if I am only the key that unlocks it, a war that devastates both the devil and heaven factions, while showing that the fallen angel reigns supreme would be satisfying enough. Not if I have anything to say about it. Naruto shouted as his demonic and holy energy swirled around him, before he spun his body around and kicked Kakabiel in the side of the head, spinning around again to deliver a second kick that connected to Kakabiel's chest, only for the man to grab onto his leg just before it connected. Kakabiel's narrow red eyes met Naruto's blue as he lifted the blonde to eye level. Every being in the world can deny it all they want, but the desire for battle is in their very blood. Take humans for example, it is in their very instinct for conflict and to kill. Maybe so, but they can rise above that. And so can every one of us. Holding out a hand, Naruto quickly fired a swirling orb of darkness at Kakabiel, hitting him point blank in the face, causing the fallen angel to let go of Naruto, in order to grab his now smoking face. Naruto created some distance between the two of them, and charged energy into Excalibur, watching as Kakabiel hold his face from the pain. Even if you are a fallen angel, you're still just as sensitive to darkness as any angel. Damn you, Lucifer, Kakabiel growled as he moved his hand away from his face to reveal a burnt mark on left cheek, while the rest was covered in scuff marks. I will enjoy making your feel despair the likes you have ever known before killing you. We'll see. Naruto replied as he raised his sword up. Unknown area. He's certainly putting up a good fight. I suppose that sister of mine did something right with making him the heir to the Lucifer clan. Rizavum smirked as he took a sip of his wine. That boy is just like the other one. To think they would both born into this world as half-breeds. His abilities certain are a lot more impressive than what he displayed against Sire. Euclid said as he studied Naruto's movements as he dodged Kakabiel's arsenal of light weapons, before they started to circle around him, an amused smile growing on his face as Naruto destroyed the weapons in an insane amount of speed and strength, which he guessed was due to Excalibur's assistance. It's an amazing spectacle. Back during the war, one had wondered what it would be like if one of the greatest holy swords in the world ended up in the hands of a devil. Honestly, I never really had any interest in those weapons, or even what my sister's family has done for the past few centuries. Rizavum said with the smirk still on his face, placing his empty glass on the small table next to his seat. But to see the potential that Naruto holds has made this very entertaining to watch, though I wish he didn't have that human compassion. Well, he was raised as a human for a large portion of his life. But this battle seems different than those. Euclid was interrupted by a female voice. Naruto Lucifer's experience in battles in the short time that he's been exposed to the underworld have always been easy for him, especially after he fully awakened. Against the fallen angels he was only tapping into his powers, and once he did they could not even touch him. While fighting that Phoenix boy he had control over both light and darkness, to such an extent that his opponent didn't stand a chance. Rizavum and Euclid turned their heads to see a cute young girl with long black hair down until her hips, gray eyes and pointy tip ears emerging from the shadows with a knowing grin on her face. She was wearing a black gothic Lolita dress that was very revealing in the front, with 2 black bandages crossed over the nipples of her small breasts. Rizavum watched in silence as the girl walked closer to them. Office, how long have you been here? Long enough to see Naruto defeat that human you gave my snakes to. Office replied as she came to a stop in front of the screen, shifting her gaze to the side to look at the 2 men behind her. It was such a waste for you to give him a power boost, though I can understand why you did it. Oh really? Yes. But all of that will depend on how this battle goes. Despite his appearance, Kakebiel is one opponent that will push Naruto to his limit. But if Naruto can't overcome him, Office started as she turned her attention back to the screen. Then that means he's not ready. Outside the barrier. I see. So Naruto has already started his fight with Kakebiel. Yes, and it looks like Kakebiel is starting to go full out. With a few minutes left, I don't think we can afford to wait very long. Yumi replied into her phone as she finished giving Azazel an update on the situation. His spell is going to activate soon. Yeah, I figured as much. That idiot's pride is getting the better of him as usual. Azazel replied before letting out a heavy sigh followed by a hum. Keep a distance for right now. But as soon as the spell has reached its final 2 minutes, I want you and Volley to take Kakebiel down if the battle is still going on. Yumi nodded her head before turning her gaze towards the direction of the barrier. Got it, I will let Val know. But we will interfere sooner if the situation looks like it will turn for the worse. I know you both will. Report back when the battle is over. Regardless of who wins the battle. Azazel ordered before he ended the call, making Yumi blink a few times before she looked at her cell phone with a confused look. Is something wrong, Yumi? Volley called out, making her turn to see he hadn't moved his head away from the battle. It's nothing. Azazel has confirmed that we are go once the timer has reached 2 minutes. Yumi replied back as she moved across the rooftop and with a massive leap, landed on the water tower next to Volley. Volley smirked as he crossed his arms. Alright then. Hopefully Kakebiel will be a good challenge for me, otherwise things will get extremely boring. Not everything going on has to have excitement, Volley. Yumi said as she mirrored his actions and crossed her arms. But I guess you do have a point, it would be too dull to end things quickly. Wow, did you just say that I'm right? Are you feeling okay? Shut up, Val. Ouch. Damn it, Yumi. NLRG 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 NLRG. Okay, so far I'm doing pretty well against him. So far Excalibur and my Twilight armor are really helping me out in keeping an even ground with Kakebiel. Naruto thought as he took in a deep breath, staring down his opponent as the fallen angel was covered in a visible yellow ore. If I can just find an opening, then I can stop him and the spell from destroying everything. The blonde was caught by surprise, however, as Kakebiel disappeared from view and felt a sharp pain on his side rib, making him look down to see the tip of Kakebiel's spear was piercing him just under his rib. Naruto's eyes widened before he used his wings to retreat back as far as he could, only to feel a hand grab onto his shoulder, tightly making him look back to see Kakebiel's glowing red eyes staring at him and his large grin. Naruto spun around quickly with his sword ready to cut the man down, but the fallen angel had already moved above the blonde devil, with 2 swords of light in his hands. With a flick of his wrist, Kakebiel threw the swords downwards at Naruto, who spun his vertically to dodge the first light weapon, while using Excalibur to deflect the other, but Naruto felt his body attack was being pushed back from the sheer strength of the attack. Is that all you've got left, Lucifer? Kakebiel shouted before throwing a newly created spear at the falling Lucifer, growing in size even more as it soared down at Naruto. The blonde concentrated his energy into Excalibur before releasing a wave of energy at the incoming projectile, but to Naruto's shock the spear cut through his energy blast, and continued its path towards him. Shit. Naruto quickly brought a hand up to summon a shield to block the light spear, but as soon as the spear made contact with the shield, it pierced into it, and caused a minor explosion that pushed Naruto, and increased his descent speed even more. What the hell? His attacks are so strong now. Naruto gritted his teeth as he sensed that he was nearing the ground, and managed to regain his balance enough to land in a crouched position. Don't tell me this whole time. That's right, I've been holding back until now to keep this battle going. Kakebiel's voice called out from behind Naruto, making him twist his body around to see that Kakebiel now had his smug grin back on his face despite the injuries. Up until now you've seen about 83% of my power, which is impressive, since that's almost twice the amount I was using against your little group, and 25% more than what I was using against Ria's Gremory, when she had received all of those boosts from her pawn and his boosted gear. But now I am at my full power. Consider it your reward for infuriating me and giving me such an entertaining fight. Naruto brought a hand up to his side where Kakabiel had stabbed him, the injury already starting to slowly heal itself, though the intensity of the pain was still there. Just great. I was wonder why it seemed so easy. The blonde removed his hand from the wound and looked at the blood covering his gauntlet-covered palm, but still, that doesn't mean I'll give up. There has to be something that can help me win. Will I? Cal. Alon. Ha. Naruto blinked as he heard a voice speak up. What was that? Saber. Yes, Naruto-sama. Did you hear that voice? What voice? I didn't hear anything. In any case, you need to focus on the battle. Time is running out. Saber's voice exclaimed, making Naruto shake his head to clear his thoughts before bringing Excalibur up in front of his torso. Kakabiel may be powerful, but no matter how strong they are, every enemy has a weakness. Naruto couldn't help but grin as he felt his body tense up. You're right, Saber. But even so. Naruto-senpai. The blonde turned his head to see Issei was running towards him with the gem of his boosted gear glowing brightly. Issei. I see. Alright, let's do it. With a large burst of speed, Naruto made his way towards the running brunette. So you're going to try this trick again? Unfortunately for you, I don't have any desire to wait. Kakabiel shouted as he created dozens of light spears around him before firing them at the two. Naruto was quick to dodge each of the weapons, though Issei wasn't as lucky as he was barely able to move out of the way on a few of them. As the two devils got close to one another, a much larger light spear was coming towards him. But neither turned to look at it as Issei extended his arm out as far as it could go. Now. Boosted gear gift. The spear collided with the ground and detonated in a large explosion that enveloped the Lucifer heir and the pawn, as the latter's hand made contact with the side of Naruto's forearm. Naruto-kun. Issei. Rias called out as she and the other stared at the giant sphere of light a distance away from them. The force of the explosion shook the area around them, and made several of them cover their eyes to block them from the dust and light magic. Transfer. The explosion soon started to fade, and a large figure could be seen in the middle of the orb, before it brought what appeared to be an arm up, and swung it across the surrounding explosion, creating an energy pillar made up of light and darkness magic. Narrowing his eyes, Kakabiel dashed forward with a large sword of light in hand, and tried to stab it into the pillar where the figure was, only for the weapon to be knocked away by the pillar. Everyone watched as the pillar was dismissed to reveal a glowing Naruto standing there with one hand holding onto Excalibur tightly, while the other arm was being used to hold an injured Issei over his shoulder, though what surprised many was the new addition to Naruto's armor. Over his head was a white helmet with two large prongs sticking out along the sides, and had a black visor similar to his assault mode over his eyes, the Lucifer emblem directly on top of it. Naruto turned his attention back to the group and seemed to vanish in an instant, catching everyone by surprise, as he suddenly appeared behind them at the tree that Kaneko had placed Ashi earlier. I didn't even sense him move, so the transfer was a success. Kakabiel thought to himself with a snarl. Unlike before when it had amused him to see that they had thought that increasing Ria's powers would actually make a difference, this increase done to Naruto's power had brought it up even higher than before. And from what he could see, Naruto's other physical abilities had increased as well. Well, no matter, in just 6 minutes I will be the victor. There's no chance of a little power boost being enough to harm me. Thanks Issei, I owe you one. Naruto said as he placed a groaning Issei next to Ashia. I'm glad I got to be useful. There are more boosts in that transfer than what I gave Bucho. Issei replied with a weak smile as he took several deep breaths. The exhaustion of the battle, and the large amounts of boosts he had gathered, was starting to get to him, having pushed his body past its limits to retain the power long enough to give it to Naruto. Kick his ass. Naruto-senpai. And protect the town. I will, and that's my promise of a lifetime. Rising back to his feet, Naruto spun around and started walk back to where Kakabiel was located. He gave each of his friends and allies a reassuring smile before stopping at Rias and Akeno, who were standing side by side. I'm going to go finish this up, make sure he's okay. You got it, Naruto-kun. Akeno answered as she started to make her way to where Issei was, coming to a halt to flash Naruto a bright smile. Good luck. And come back alive. Right? Naruto nodded his head before turning to Rias, who crossed her arms under her large bust. She smiled confidently at him. I know you'll come back to me alive. All I can say is this. Win this battle. Sounds like a plan. The blonde raised a hand to Ria's cheek, surprising the girl at how soft the palm of the armor's gauntlet was. Once we're done we can all go home. Pulling his arm away from the girl, Naruto focused his attention solely on Kakabiel, before moving instantly across the area, until he was standing several feet away from the fallen angel. The two of them were silent as they started walking closer to each other, while letting their auras flow around them. The ground cracked and the pressure within the air continued to build with each step they took. I'm surprised you let me talk to them before coming here. Awfully generous of you. Hahaha, well I wanted you to enjoy your last moments with them before I killed you all. But enough with the small talk. Kakabiel raised a hand in front of him and created a new sword of light, this one more detailed, and Naruto could tell this one was a more concentrated version of his usual weapons. The two of us don't have the time to talk, so we'll settle this with our blades. Naruto raised his sword up and pointed at Kakabiel. That's fine with me. The two stared at each other for several seconds, both disappearing in an instant, only to reappear seconds later in the center ground between them with their weapons pressing against each other with sparks, and their auras wildly circulating around them. Both of them were briefly at a standstill before they disappeared again, reappearing at several locations around the battlefield, with their weapons slamming against each other. Kakabiel's red eyes narrowed as he stared at Naruto's helmet-covered face, applying more force into his blade to push the younger man back, but Naruto seemed to hold strong. But this clash soon came to a halt when various types of light weapons appeared around them with their blades pointing at Naruto, who remained silent as the weapons fired themselves at him. Kakabiel retreated back into the air as the weapons drew close, as he fully expected his assault to strike Naruto down, but to his surprise multiple swords and spears made up of light and darkness magic surrounded Naruto's form, while the armored devil swung his arm outward, sending his own weapons to intercept the incoming attacks. A large number of the weapons destroyed each other, while a few of Kakabiel's remaining weapons stayed on course towards Naruto. The weapon's destruction had created an opening for Naruto however, which allowed him to dodge the attacks with his newly enhanced speed, and temporarily vanish from sight, only to reappear over Kakabiel's head with his golden light magic, covering the blade of Excalibur, before releasing a wave of energy much larger than before at Kakabiel. I thought I showed you that won't work against me. Kakabiel stated as he created another spear with his free hand and threw it at Naruto's attack, the spear colliding against the blast, and starting to push it back. Naruto didn't say anything though as he raised his sword again, and this time charged darkness into Excalibur, causing it to create sparks from the demonic energy making contact with the holy sword. Swinging his sword downwards, Naruto released another energy blast at his first one, slamming into the back of the first one, and increased the pressure behind its attack. The two energy attacks whirled together as they pushed Kakabiel's spear back, before destroying it and continuing its course towards the wide-eyed fallen angel, who brought his wings in quickly to block the attack. A small explosion occurred upon impact, and smoke surrounded Kakabiel's form for a few moments, departing quickly to reveal that the side of his wings that he had used to block the attack were now burned and bloody. The Lucifer heir started to pant heavily as his shoulders slouched slightly. Damn. I thought that would be enough to severely injure him. Very impressive Naruto Lucifer, Kakabiel said as he slowly moved his wings back to their previous position. It's been far too long since I've been pushed so far. You should feel proud of yourself, but now this battle must come to an end. The fallen angel held out his sword in front of him, and slowly moved it clockwise, creating a magical circle from the light from the weapon until it vanished completely. This is one of the strongest attacks I know, now be consumed by the corrupted abyss. Divine obliteration. The center of the seal shined brightly with purple lightning surrounding it, before a yellow beam erupted from the circle, and flew towards Naruto at alarming speeds. This attack. If I try to dodge it then. Naruto's eyes whitened behind his helmet as he thought about the destruction that would occur to the area and the deaths of everyone here. Screw the spell, this one attack could destroy everything on its own. I've got no choice. Drawing on the remaining power that Issei had given him, Naruto directed everything to his sword, which caused its form to be cloaked in the swirling energies. With a swing of his sword, Naruto released his own attack at the beam, slamming it into the powerful attack, and seemed to halt its movements. But only for a brief moment as it actually pushed Naruto's attack back, while the blonde himself felt his body struggling to stay in one place. Soon Kakabiel's beam managed to reach a couple of feet away from Naruto, and was about to make contact. Naruto-sama. The beam broke through the remains of Naruto's attack and covered him in the blast, consuming him and the area around him. Ryuz let out a gasp as she watched Naruto's form disappear in the light, not focusing on the fact that the blast had created an exploding orb that was expanding outwards. Suddenly she felt a hand grab onto her and pull her back, making her turn to see that the hand belonged to Kaneko, who was running with the others towards the trees to escape the orb's reach. The dome soon halted its growth and remained for a few seconds before it started to slowly fade away. Humph, he attacked my spell to lower its power, and took the brunt of it to prevent it from destroying the town. How foolish. Kakabiel muttered with a frown as he watched the dome continue to dissipate, knowing well that there was nothing could have defended against his attack, much less survive it. Naruto. Croon. Akeno whispered to herself as she brought a hand to her heart, her body trembling as she and the others continued to watch the battle from the forest area. It can't be. Kiba said with wide eyes while Zenobia and Gotwain remained silent. Issei weakly opened one of his eyes due to the lights going off in the distance, and next to him, Ashia was starting to stir. Kaneko bowed her head with a pained expression as she let go of Ria's hand, which allowed the Redeed to take a step forward. No. Please no. Ria's eyes widened when she caught sight of a crouched figure in the middle of the vanishing dome, and a relieved smile grew on her face. Naruto-kun. Impossible. Kakabiel narrowed his eyes as he too watched as the dome completely disappeared to reveal an injured Naruto using his sword to keep him up, cracks covering most of his armor, while several fragments were missing. Naruto's helmet was gone as well to reveal a trail of blood falling down the side of his face, and he had one eye closed to keep the blood from getting into it. The black-haired man took notice to the area directly in front of and behind Naruto were intact, while the rest of the area was destroyed. How the hell did you manage to survive? Let's just say, I'm too stubborn to die. Naruto panted as his body trembled, but his grip of Excalibur remained strong as he stared up at Kakabiel. Well, I must agree with you there. Kakabiel smirked as he held his hand out once more and created another magical circle, but can you survive another on? What is that thing? Naruto glanced down a little to see Saber hovering in front of him with her arms stretched out. Saber. I won't allow you to harm my master anymore, Kakabiel. Saber shouted as she glared up at the fallen angel. Oh really? Hihaha, is this the best you have left, Naruto Lucifer? A tiny little spirit. Kakabiel exclaimed as he charged up his next attack. Saber. Naruto weakly called as he stared at Saber's tiny back, reaching out to her with one of his hands. You need to believe in Excalibur and Avalon. Naruto's eyes widened as he heard the voice once again, and in a flash of light an image appeared in his mind. A familiar image of a lone man standing on a hill, surrounded by the remnants of battle and death. Getting a good look at the man's back, Naruto reached out towards him in shock, as the man turned around to look at Naruto with his unwavering blue-green eyes. Believe in Excalibur and Avalon. For together they shall bring you absolute victory. King Arthur. Naruto whispered to himself as the man's image was replaced by Saber. Excalibur and Saber together. That's it. So you finally understand, Naruto-sama. Saber called back to him as a determined smile appeared on her face. Then I shall follow your lead. Time to die, Lucifer. Divine obliteration. The center of the seal released another lightning-covered beam that flew towards Naruto and Saber, only for a large golden barrier to appear in front of the two, and completely block the attack. What? You can't break through her shield. She is the ultimate defense created by God and Lady Vivian. A legendary holy weapon that's defense has no equal, Naruto explained as he raised Excalibur off the ground, and pointed its blade at Saber's back. Named after the utopia that King Arthur saw in his dreams, a place that only a few could ever hope to reach. And that name is. Saber let out a gasp as her body began to glow before her body turned into what appeared to be a golden blue sheath. Avalon. The sheath continued to shine brightly as several rays of light spiraled into the air before splitting into two separate beams, one of them crashing down on Naruto, who closed his eyes when he felt the Avalon's power surging through him. The second ray of light rushed over to the forest where the others were located, covering all of them in a glittery gold light. Issei couldn't help but flinch when the light had made contact, but after a few seconds he opened his eyes in shock. It doesn't hurt. Issei muttered as he looked around to see the other devils in the group were not being affected by the light either. In fact, it looked like it was actually healing them. The brunette could feel the exhaustion he had before fate as he slowly made his way back to his feet. But how? It's Avalon's healing ability. Ryuz called out in amazement as she held her hands out as the light brushed past her fingers. Arcuite studied the light surrounding them and crossed her arms with a hum. Interesting, he has enough control now to heal up without the light magic weakening us. Ashia slowly started to open her eyes when she felt a warm and soothing sensation flow through her, looking around to see the golden light surrounding her and her friends. Huh? What is this? Ashia. Gawain called out as he moved by her side as the girl tilted her head towards the area where the battle was happening. This isn't possible. There's no way you could have that weapon. Kakabiel shouted as he glared down at Naruto, raising his hand in the air with a roar, and created a gigantic light spear that was as big as the school, with multiple purple rings circling around it. I'm through playing around, Naruto Lucifer. Naruto said nothing in response to Kakabiel's words, as he positioned his sword by his side with both hands on Excalibur's hilt, spreading his wings as far as they could go before leaping towards Kakabiel. Avalon's light was still flowing around Naruto's body as he soared through the air, glowing brightly as his twilight armor was restoring itself and the cracks fading away. Hey! D. The fallen angel roared as he brought his arms back and threw them forward to propel the spear at the airborne Naruto. Raising the glowing Excalibur up in front of him, Naruto increased his speed as he charged towards the incoming light spear, with his sword hoisted over his shoulder. Naruto charged as much power as he could into his next attack, before swinging it at the spear. Excalibur. An energy wave in the shape of a blade made up of light and darkness, erupted from the tip of Naruto's sword, much larger and controlled in comparison to the previous versions the blonde had unleashed earlier. To Kakabiel's shock, Naruto's attack cut through his spear easily, and the energy blade continued on until it reached Kakabiel. The attack landed and slashed him across his torso, making the fallen angel cough up blood as he felt the blow leave a fatal injury. With the attack dealing such a blow, Kakabiel felt his body start to descend towards the ground, his blood trailing in the air after him until his back slammed into the ground. This is the end, Kakabiel. Naruto shouted as he appeared over his opponent and stabbed Excalibur's blade downwards, running Kakabiel's heart clean through. The man let out a painful grunt as he felt the burning sensation of the holy sword piercing his body. Everyone watched in awe as Naruto hovered over Kakabiel's unmoving body, and could feel the magical pressure that Kakabiel had created start to fade away. The magic being used for the fallen angel's Earthbreaker spell rose high up into the air before dispersing into particles, leaving the group in silence. Issei was the first one to speak as he let out a cheer. Alright. Naruto-senpai won. He did it, he actually beat Kakabiel. Kiba said in awe. Naruto Lucifer, what a fearsome man. Zenobia stated as she stared at Naruto's back before turning her attention to the other devils in the group. I'm so glad he's alright. Rias whispered to herself as she let out a relieved sigh. Me too, Rias. Bakeno said as she walked up to her king's side. We should let Sona and the others know that the battle is over. Right? Arcuite could only smile as she stared at her own king's back. He's come a long way. So that was your secret. Avalon, the utopia said to be the final destination for all great kings. It was created by God, but it was never classified as one of the sacred gears. Kakabiel stated as he only stared up at the sky, feeling his body start to die as his blood continued to flow out of his chest. The one defense that nothing could hope to penetrate, even against all the different styles of magic in the world. To think it would be in the hands of a descendant of Lucifer. How laughable. Naruto slowly pulled his sword out of Kakabiel's body. Kakabiel, did you really desire war that much? Heh. What a stupid question. Of course I did. As I said before, battle is the only place in the world for people like us. Kakabiel let out a chuckle that made him cough up some blood. In that war, I saw so many of my brethren killed. To simply accept peace so easily would have made me sick. To spit on their sacrifices. I suppose I can understand that. Naruto replied as Saber reappeared on his shoulder in a small flash of light, but even so, I couldn't let you get your way. If I had done that, then how could I have faced everyone who tried so hard to stop you? Kakabiel had a grin on his face when he heard that, so you saw things through my perspective. But still decided to fight against me. I suppose. This was the expected outcome for me in the end. As soon as he said that, the lower half of his body started to fade away into golden particles. That's fine, I'm satisfied. Kakabiel. Your potential is incredible, Naruto Lucifer. If only I could have fought you again in the future. Kakabiel commented as his legs had completely vanished and his waist was starting to follow. But still, this has been an enjoyable battle. The perfect ending that I wanted for my war. One that I and my opponent gave everything we had in order to win. Yeah, Naruto replied as he stabbed Excalibur into the ground in front of him and bowed his head. Even though you were my enemy, I did enjoy our battle somewhat, Kakabiel. Humph, save your words. Kakabiel said as his grin faded away as he closed his eyes. His wings and torso already halfway gone, continued to grow stronger. Naruto Lucifer, There are many out there in the world that are stronger than you can imagine. I will. Goodbye, fallen angel Kakabiel. Naruto said as he watched the rest of Kakabiel's body fade away, leaving him alone on the battlefield. It's finally over. Naruto's eyes widened for a few seconds before returning to normal. Damn it, Naruto didn't get to finish, however, as the entire barrier surrounding the school started to crack and break apart, making everyone snap their heads up to see a white sphere of light hovering above them. The light lowered down until it was just above the trees, before coming to a halt and dispersed to reveal two figures floating above their heads. The first was easily recognizable as it was Kiba's sister, Yumi. The second figure, however. So you managed to defeat Kakabiel, not bad. A male voice came from the second figure, which was a male figure wearing a white armor covered in blue jewels. The physical appearance of the armor, helmet and even the blue wings on his back screamed dragon-like. Those wings. You're the guy from the docks with Azazel. Naruto said as he studied the wings on the white armored man's back. Correct, Azazel had asked us to take care of Kakabiel if you and the others couldn't handle it. Yumi replied as she and her companion lowered themselves to ground level. To be honest, I didn't think you could do it, but I suppose that holy artifact of yours played a big part in this. Who is that guy? Issei asked himself as he stared at the armored man standing next to Yumi, feeling a bead of sweat falling down his cheek as he braced himself. What is this feeling I'm getting from just looking at him? I'm trembling, but it's not from fear. Be careful around him, Issei. The brunette looked down at his gauntlet to see that the green jewel in the center was glowing. Lifting up the gauntlet closer to his face, Issei raised an eyebrow. Drake, do you know this guy? Not personally, but I do know that he is the host of my rival, the Vanishing Dragon. Drake answered, causing Issei's eyes to grow white, as he recalled Drake's earlier warnings about the Vanishing Dragon, as well as the message Zenovia had told him earlier. And very soon he will be your rival to come. Arcuite narrowed her eyes as she heard what Drake had said through the gauntlet. The Vanishing Dragon, also known as the White Emperor Dragon. Like the Red Dragon Emperor, it was sealed away in a sacred gear called the Divine Dividing, but that's the only thing those two have in common. Unlike your boosted gear, which increases your power every 10 seconds and allows you to transfer that power to someone or something else, the Divine Dividing can halve their opponent's power every 10 seconds, and uses that power as their own. So the legends were true after all. Ria said as she listened to Arcuite's explanation, and Drake's as well to her shock, since she never expected the dragon within the gauntlet to actually speak, while keeping her attention on the two. But why are you two here then if Kakabiel has been defeated? We're just here to confirm his death. Yumi replied before turning her head to the side where an unconscious Fried laid. Perfect, we were asked to bring that one in as well for questioning. While Yumi moved over to Fried's body, Naruto and Volley remained in their same spots as they quietly studied one another. Naruto narrowed his eyes suspiciously as he couldn't help but get a strange feeling as he stared at the armored figure, who he knew from what he saw earlier, was most likely the same age as him. Volley likewise copied Naruto's actions as he observed the blonde devil, his battle with Kakabiel flashing through his mind. Alright Volley, I've secured the stray. Yumi called out as she started to make her way back to Volley's side, pausing for a second to glance over at Kiba. The twins stared at each other for a few seconds before Yumi flashed Kiba a warm smile. I'm glad to see that you're not hurt. I've missed you, little brother. Kiba could feel tears building up in his eyes when he heard that, quickly wiping them away before returning a smile of his own. Me too. You don't know how much I wanted to see you again, Yumi, to know that you were alive. Though I didn't think you'd be a fallen angel. Yeah, I could say the same about you being a devil. Yumi replied before continuing her way next to Volley, securing her grip on Fried as she looked up at him. We should be leaving now, Azazel is expecting us. Turning his head away from Naruto, Volley nodded his head at Yumi's words. Right, let's get going. Are you going to ignore me, White One? Drake asked from Issei's boosted gear, making Volley and Yumi halt their departure to look back at Issei. I was wondering when I would see you again, Red One, a new voice spoke up. This one was coming from Volley's dragon wings, which flashed as the voice spoke. Our battle is destined to continue. Drake's voice could be heard letting out a grunt. Agreed, it is inevitable. Until we meet again, Albion. The tension created from the two dragons' words caught everyone's attention, no more so than Volley and Issei, who hardened his stare at the white armored man. It was obvious to everyone that when the time came for these two to do battle, it would be one filled with destruction. Yes, and be sure to make your host as strong as he can be. Albion said as Volley spun around to continue his departure. Yumi was already floating in the air next to him. It would a shame if he was too weak to face mine when the time comes. Hold on. Issei called out to Volley. Who are you? I don't understand. If you want to understand then get stronger, my archenemy. I look forward to our future fight. Volley answered as his body began to glow bright, before turning his attention towards Naruto. As for you, Naruto Lucifer, keep getting stronger. You are someone I am very interested in fighting in the future. Someone like me. Before anyone could question what he meant by that, Volley and Yumi took off at incredible speeds, leaving behind dust clouds in their wake. Soon the two became bright flashes in the distance. So the White Dragon Emperor actually appeared, huh? Ryuz turned her head to see that Sona and her peerage were making their way towards them, yeah, though it looks like he wasn't needed. True, this victory was thanks to Naruto and Avalon. Though I doubt neither he nor that fallen angel he was with truly cared about the destruction that Kakabiel was going to create, Sona said as she pushed up her glasses before turning her attention to her queen. Tsubaki, we've got a lot of work to do in cleaning this mess up. We should have all the damage done to the school repaired before classes start. Would you like us to help you out? Ryuz offered with a smile, only for Sona to dismiss it with a shake of her head. No, this is the job of the student council. Sona said before she and her peerage got to work. Arcude made her way over to Naruto's side as she watched Kiba stare at his new holy demonic sword, before Issei walked up to him. Looks like things managed to work out in the end, huh? Maybe, but now we have some unanswered questions about what is really going on. The secrets of the three factions, the guy that was hired to kill me, and now the White Dragon Emperor. There is so much that we don't know. Naruto replied as he saw Kiba kneel in front of Ryuz, but I guess that's for another day. The White Queen stared at Naruto for a few seconds before smiling brightly at him. Right. Very true, Naruto-sama. Saber said before she took notice to something off about Naruto. I just realized this. But why haven't you moved an inch since the White Dragon Emperor and Kiba's sister had left? Not a second after she said that, Naruto's armor dispersed and she felt her master's body start to fall. Naruto-sama. Saber's voice caught everyone's attention and made them snap their heads to look at them, which Kiba was thankful for since Ryuz was delivering his punishment. Unfortunately, it was short-lived when they saw Naruto's body fall forward. Luckily, he was caught by Arcude before he hit the ground. Everyone rushed to their side with worried expressions, circling around them with Ryuz and Akeno getting close to his body. Ashia was the next one to get close as she activated her Twilight Healing and started to get to work. But no matter what she did, Naruto wouldn't open his eyes. Naruto. Naruto-kun. Wake up. What's wrong with him? Why isn't he waking up? Naruto-ni-san. NLRG 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 NLRG. Naruto will be just fine, he just pushed his body past its limits during the battle. Kaguya explained as she looked at Ryuz and Akeno who were sitting across from her and Arcude. It was the day after their battle with Kakabiel. It had passed by quickly, and the blonde was still unconscious in his room, recovering under the care of everyone in the Lucifer household. Ryuz had been watching him until recently when Kaguya had requested her and the queen's presence to fill her in on Naruto's situation. Everyone was doing their own thing as they relaxed after the battle, moving about the mansion to explore and recuperated. That's great news, I was worried when he suddenly passed out like that. Ryuz replied as she had a smile of relief grow on her face. I'll say, you and Akeno were the most panicked about his condition. Arcude snickered as she glanced at the two girls, his faces turned red as they avoided looking at the former vampire and Kaguya. Though Ryu's body twitched when she processed what Arcude had said and looked back at Akeno, who refused to look at her. Now, Arcude. Their worry was justified. After all, what my grandson did was reckless, Kaguya said with a laugh, making everyone turn their attention to her. He would have been fine if he had taken time to adjust to his power, but he released the seal in tandem with the tremendous powers of both Excalibur and Avalon. Being exposed to all of that power at once is too much for anyone under normal circumstances. The fact that he had to fight Kakabiel and was injured so badly pushed his body too far. But what about his healing? Surely Avalon's healing capabilities played into effect in keeping him safe. Akeno said as her blush subsided, but Arcude shook her head at that. Take it from me that regenerative powers are good in restoring the body, but if the injury is bad enough, then it can put a strain on the body, and actually lower your strength if you're not careful. The former ancestor explained before flashing the two girls a smile. The good news though is now that he has experienced that level of power, his body will be able to adjust and handle it better. I can't help but think that this whole situation seemed a little strange. A female voice spoke up, making the four turn to see Kushina walking into the living room. Akeno raised an eyebrow at the repeated woman's words. What do you mean, Kushina-san? From what you've told me, and with everything that's been happening lately, it's possible that there was more to it than Kakabiel putting his plan into action. Kushina explained as she crossed her arms. This assassin that was after Naruto, all of the Excalibur fragments being in one place, followed by Naruto needing to go all out against Kakabiel. It feels as if there was someone behind the scenes of all this. You mean that there was someone else that actually manipulated Kakabiel from the shadows? Is that possible? Rias questioned with a frown at just the thought. If there was someone that actually took advantage of the fallen angel and his hatred of the other two factions, then there was a lot more going on than previously thought. You'd be surprised at the things I've seen in my many years of experience. Arcuite answered as she glanced outside the living room's window and took notice to a small black figure running across the ground. I suggest we all keep an eye out in the future. Kaguya closed her eyes as she seemed to go deep in thought, before nodding her head. I agree. Well now Rias, I believe you should go up to Naruto's room, he should be waking up soon. And maybe you could bring that boy with you. Gawain, I believe, he wanted to talk to Naruto, correct? Rias blinked a few times as she recalled the wielder of Excalibur Galatine had mentioned wanting to talk to her fiancé when the chance arose. Standing up and made her way out of the room with Akeno following after her, Rias decided to look for the teen and see what he wanted. Kaguya watched the two girls leave the room and clenched one of her hands into a tight fist. I know you have something to do with this, Rizavum. And I won't let you have your way. Naruto's room. Two blue eyes opened slowly as their owner let out a groan. Naruto raised a hand up to his face, as he tried to process where he was. I'm back home. Good afternoon Naruto-sama, Saber's voice called out, making the blonde turn his head to the side to see the tiny spirit was sitting Caesar position on the desk next to his bed. You've been out for quite a while, it seems you were completely drained after the battle. How are you feeling? The battle? Oh right, between Kakabiel and I. Naruto replied as he lifted his body up into a sitting position. I'm doing okay now, I guess using that large burst of power got the better of me in my injured state. I felt like I was going to pass out any second, guess I need to work on using all that power at once, huh? Saber nodded her head. Yes, I think that would be best for now. You were unconscious for most of the day, school has already ended. Wow, I missed a lot then. What have I missed, Ava? I mean Saber. Sorry. It's quite alright. Maybe it is time that I return to my original name, Saber said with a small smile as she brought a hand to her chest. Maybe it is because of the joy I feel being reunited with Excalibur, but I feel as though a large burden on my shoulders has been lifted. So please, call me Avalon if you'd like. Naruto grinned at her words as he nodded his head. Alright then, so what's been happening since I lost consciousness? I remember Kiba's sister and that being there, before taking Frieda away, and then Sona working with her peerage to repair the school. But after that, nothing. I suppose that would make sense, you were feeling the aftermaths of the battle. We almost immediately brought you back here to have you looked at. It seems that there were some injuries that remained after the battle, but my power has long healed it. Avalon explained as she gestured to the bandages wrapped around Naruto's stomach and head, to which the blonde began to remove them. Everyone has been worried about you. Rias and Akeno had stopped by several times with several others in tow. Ivanashi and Mito had come by with Gawain and Zenobia during their school break. Wait, Gawain and Zenobia? I would have thought that they'd be on their way back to the Vatican or the church they came from, and Arena too. Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion as he rubbed the back of his now bandaged-free head. What about the situation with Excalibur? They didn't try to take it, did they? No. Excalibur is currently sealed away inside of me and by extension, you. This way you'll still be able to summon it whenever you desire. Avalon answered while lowering her head a bit, and as for the mission they were assigned, apparently they received a message from the upper ranks, saying that it was alright to leave Excalibur in our possession. Arena is currently on a flight back to their headquarters as we speak. Just Arena? Naruto blinked in confusion as he thought about what his tiny companion had just said. It raised a whole new bunch of questions on why the Heaven faction would actually allow Excalibur to be left in his hands, after all the trouble that it arose from Kakabiel stealing the fragments in the first place. Is it possible that Lady Vivian had made contact with them? Or was it someone else who convinced them to let me keep it? Whoever it was has to be pretty high in the ranks. The blonde Lucifer was brought out of his thoughts as he heard Avalon continue. As for the current status of Gawain and Zenobia, both have decided to remain here. The latter has even decided to be reincarnated as Ria's second knight. But Gawain hasn't said what his agenda is, only that he needed to speak to you once you woke up. But if I had to guess from Zenobia's actions, It's a possibility, but we'll wait until the conversation arises before we assume anything. Naruto finally said as he started to get out of his bed and stretched, before looking down to notice that he was only wearing pajama pants. Shaking his head at his attire, Naruto made his way over to his closet. From what Avalon had said, it's too late to change his clothes now, so a shirt would be fine. Putting on one of the black t-shirts, Naruto turned his head back to look at Avalon, who was looking down deep in thought. Something wrong? No, not really. It's just, I was thinking about the sword in Gawain's possession. The Excalibur Galatine was the sister sword of Excalibur, and while it was not a powerful, it was still a sword to be feared. Originally the sword belonged to King Arthur's nephew, whose name was also Gawain. The coincidence of that. Avalon paused before shaking her head a few times. Never mind, I suppose it is something to look into later on. Anyway, Naruto-sama, I believe congratulations are in order. Huh? The tiny spirit smiled brightly as she rose up to her feet and flew over to the devil. You not only managed to defeat Kakabiel, but you also completed the quest that Lady Vivian had given you in restoring Excalibur. Naruto lifted up his hand for Avalon to land on his palm. You've come a long way, Naruto-sama. Thanks, Avalon, I appreciate that. The blonde smiled as he looked down at his tiny friend, before he lifted his head up with a chuckle. You know, your attempts to sneak up on me in the past haven't worked, and today is no different. Kuroka. Naruto, and Avalon by extension, turned their heads towards the windows to see a black cat sitting propped up on the interior ledge. The feline said nothing as first before it exploded in a small cloud of smoke. Oh. Why can't you let me have my fun, Naya? Maybe next time. Naruto replied as he watched the cat's figure was replaced by a familiar busty figure. Though there was thing he wasn't expecting as the cloud dissipated. Gah, why are you naked? Come now, what kind of cat do you know wears clothing? Kuroka teased as she crossed one of her long, smooth legs over the other, while placing her hands on the ledge behind her, arranging herself in a pose that made her enormous breasts push out more, as if to put them on display. Besides, do you really want to complain on the view? Such a lewd and vulgar woman. Avalon shouted with a twitching eyebrow. Calm down, Avalon, Kuroka doesn't mean any harm. Naruto said as he used his free hand to pat the girl on the head, before lifting his head up to give the Nekomata a smirk. And as for you, if you can't wear clothes while in cat form, then why keep the headband? Kuroka blinked a few times at his question before she reached up between her cat ears where her headband was located, and to Naruto's surprise, she gained a somber look. This headband. It's very precious to me. I could never get rid of it. I see. Slowly nodding his head in understanding, Naruto decided to talk about something else. Hopefully Kuroka would open up to him in time and start to trust him, whenever that was. So what brings you here? I wanted to check on you, NYAH, Kuroka replied as she perked up instantly, silently grateful to Naruto for changing the subject. I was there at the school during the battle with that fallen angel, and I got to see you at full power. I was really impressed. You were there, huh? I'm guessing to watch over your sister. Kuroka giggled as she shot a hand into the air, which made her breasts bounce from the sudden movement. That's right. I was watching from the side and was going to interfere, but it looked like I wasn't needed, Naya. Though it looked like you had some trouble in the middle of the battle. Yeah, well, Kakabiel was a powerful opponent. One of the strongest people I've ever fought. But still, you managed to come out on top, and that counts for something. Kuroka smiled mischievously as she rose up to her feet and started walking up to Naruto, who noticed the alluring way that she was swaying in her hips, and the seductive look she was giving him as she got close. Soon she was inches away from him and pressed up against him, making him lower his arms and for Avalon to start floating in the air as she wrapped her arms around his neck. Such a powerful man, already filled with so much power and the potential to get even stronger than this, and why? Kuroka. Naruto could feel his cheeks from the sensation of her chest pressing against his as her face got close. It was one thing to shrug off her seductive tactics while in a fight, but for her to be doing something like this, while completely focused on him, was on a different level entirely. And the look in her eyes as her own lightly blushing face rose closer to his. Off to the side, Avalon continued to float in the air with a red face, getting ready to intervene. What are you? Kuroka leaned up to get closer to his face, and let out a sultry whisper, as her lips was millimeters from his own. Tell me, Naruto. Would you like to make some children with me? Naruto's eyes widened at the question before he reached up and grabbed Kuroka's shoulders, stopping her from continuing. What did you say? Come on now, Kuroka replied as her golden yellow eyes locked onto his azure blue. You know exactly what I said, Naya. The children we could ma. I think I heard something coming from Naruto-kun's room, Bucho. I believe you're right. Let's go inside. Naruto and Kuroka turned their heads towards the door as soon as they heard the voices coming from outside. The two created some distance between them and glanced at each other for a few seconds, and to Naruto's surprise Kuroka let out a soft laugh. Looks like things will have to be put on hold, Naruto. Kuroka said in a low voice before she once again closed the distance between them and licked Naruto's cheek, just at the very corner of his lips, before pulling back with a smile. Think about my offer, Naya. Before Naruto had any time to say anything, Kuroka disappeared through the window, and the door opened to reveal Rias, followed by the other members of her peerage and Godwing. They all froze as they took in the fact that Naruto was not only awake, but also up on his feet. Naruto-kun. The blonde snapped out of his daze and turned towards the door in time to catch Rias running towards him, with a relieved smile on her face, and tears building up in her eyes. The Gremory heiress didn't stop as she tackled Naruto and caused them to fall to the ground, with her arms wrapped tightly around his waist, while she pressed her head against his chest. I'm so glad to see you're awake. I've been so worried. Sorry to worry you, Rias-chan. Naruto smiled softly at the girl as he reached up and patted her head. You should be. Rias' voice replied cutely as it was muffled into Naruto's shirt. Soon everyone snapped out of their thoughts and rushed towards the two, all of them smiling at the fact that their friend was awake. Akeno and Ashia were the first ones to reach Naruto and Rias, as to help the two get back on their feet, though they immediately joined Rias in hugging Naruto, which was mimicked by the others. As everyone congratulated him, and talked about how worried they were, Naruto shifted his gaze to the open window where Kuroka had exited, his thoughts on the various emotions he had seen in her eyes. Especially when she touched her headband. Meanwhile. So, you managed to locate her. In a dark room filled with lanterns, several figures could be seen sitting around a large table that had been snapped in half. The room itself looked to be the remains of a dining room, as there were destroyed furniture, ripped curtains and claw marks on the walls. But this did not seem to bother any of them as they sat in their seats. Yes, another figure spoke up as they turned their head to look at the larger male figure sitting at the head of the destroyed table. It has taken us some time due to her abilities, but we finally found out where she is. Good, too many years have passed since that wench disappeared after killing my brother. Now our family will have its revenge. The large man exclaimed as he raised a fist and pounded it on the armrest. But what would be the best course of actions? A female figure asked as she tilted her head towards the man. Even if we go there now, it doesn't mean she'll be easy to find and defeat. She's been able to avoid the entire underworld for years now. The first figure let out a chuckle as they reached into their pocket and took out a photo. But we know something that will get her attention. And once we make our move, we will not only get our revenge on her, but make her experience the pain we went through. With a flick of their wrist, the figure tossed the photo to the center of the table for all to see. Haha, perfect. There's no way that filthy stray will ignore us if we target the thing she cares about most. The man's laughter echoed throughout the room as everyone looked at the photograph's image of a familiar young schoolgirl with white hair and gold eyes, wearing two black cat-shaped hair clips. Our time for revenge is upon us. Kuroka and her little sister shall feel the wrath of our family, and beg for death when we are through with them. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.